folks, if it is morning when you're watching this. And it's another of these recordings from home, which are not really my scene because I prefer to be up in front of people and moving around, which is kind of difficult when you're attached to a screen. Anyway, I hope this week finds you in a good space. Heather's going to bring a message to us this morning. It's something that's been on her mind for a number of weeks, I think. And so I said, look, why don't you deliver the message? Because I think it's an important one for people to hear and to encourage them through that. So my role today is to bring you a Bible reading and just make a couple of little other comments that I hope will be helpful. There's a lot of nonsense coming out on the internet and about what the cause of this current coronavirus is, and all the plots that are going on behind the scenes, and who's trying to control who and who's trying to do what, and I don't know, but my only feeling is there's a lot of nonsense, and trust the health authorities, trust what the scientists are saying about this virus and how best to protect ourselves, and don't get caught up in all these different theories that are coming up. Everybody's got a theory about something, and if you think that they're crazy, well, some of them probably are crazy. I just encountered recently a story of a person who's just bought into the flat Earth belief now. I mean, this is a relatively intelligent person, but flat Earth? Come on. And there's lots of these things that are going around. So my advice is stick to what the government is saying, stick to what the health officials are saying, and let's just try to help each other through this. I'm encouraged by something that the Apostle Paul wrote. He's in prison when he's writing this. I'll read it to you. But he's in prison, and the church is going through some kind of difficulty. And he's writing a message to a church in a place called Philippi. Philippi was a church that he started, and it was known for its love. And they had a great love for each other. But as always happens, once you have something like this happening, you have people coming in and trying to disrupt the church, cause disunity. It's been with the church since the beginning of time, and it's in our day as well. I was at a concert last night, and it was a really good concert. I mean, I enjoyed it. But the thing I didn't enjoy was there was a lot of negative music in it, a lot of negative songs. For me, negative anyways. It made me feel like I wanted to go out and hang myself. That's the kind of stuff it was. But other people enjoyed it, and hey, good for them. I just felt that in a time when a lot of people are feeling a bit down, we needed something to cheer us up. And the Apostle Paul was aware of that when he was writing to the church at Philippi. And he had this to say. I just want to read from his letter. He says, in conclusion, my brothers and sisters, fill your minds with those things that are good and that deserve praise, things that are true, noble, right, pure, lovely, and honorable. There's a lot of television programs as well, and we seem to major in a lot of these that are full of murder and mayhem and deception and outright evil in some of them. And my advice would be to don't bother with them. Find some comedies. Find something to make you laugh. Find something to lift up the good levels in your system. And enjoy some of the good things and the beauty and the positive things in the world. You don't need to load yourself with doom and gloom and other kinds of stuff. As the hymn said, it is my Father's world. And I truly believe that there's abundance of blessing around us, and we'll come through this. And when we do, it will be a blessing, and we'll be a blessing to others. So enjoy what Heather has to say this morning, and enjoy some of the music that I hope will accompany this message. God bless.
Love divine, all love's excelling, joy of heaven to earth come down, fix in us thy humble dwelling, all thy faithful mercies crown. Jesus, thou art all compassion, pure unbounded love thou art. Visit us with thy salvation, enter every trembling heart. Breathe, oh breathe thy loving spirit into every troubled breast. Let us all in thee inherit, let us find the promised rest. Take away the love of sinning, Alpha and Omega be, end of faith as its beginning. Set our hearts at liberty. Come, Almighty, to deliver. Let us all thy life receive. Suddenly return and never, never more thy temples leave. Thee we would be always blessing, serve thee as thy host above, pray and praise thee without ceasing, glory in thy perfect love. Finish then thy new creation, pure and spotless let us be. Let us see thy great salvation, perfectly restored in thee, changed from glory into glory, till in heaven we take our place, till we cast our crowns before thee, lost in wonder, love and praise.
Well, hello everybody. When I racially said last week that if we were still not going to be in church this week, I might share something, I was really hoping that that was not going to happen, that I'd have to share something. But here we are, and having said it publicly, I felt I should come through and do what I'd said. This is in no ways a sermon, I'm sorry. It's rather more some of my thoughts, my personal thoughts on the COVID situation, which I'd just like to share with you, and I thought perhaps some of you might identify with. Yes, here we go. So what of 2020? A year like no other, I'm sure you'll agree. Yes, it started off normally enough with Christmas and New Year, leading into what promised to be another great year. Initial news of the coronavirus didn't cause us too much concern. It was a long way away. We were probably quite safe. But by late March, our entire country was in lockdown and we were all confined to home for at least a month. And nationwide restrictions were put in place. How did we cope? Suddenly, it seemed we all united as a team of 5 million New Zealanders working for a common cause for the good of our country. We all lined up at our televisions for the daily report at 1 o'clock from Jacinda and Ashley. We spoke to neighbours we hadn't spoken to for years. And generally, I think, there was a great sense of camaraderie. We were all in this together. I was personally highly motivated, setting goals for every day. I think that's what kept me going. I need to set goals for every day. The house needed spring cleaning throughout, and it was even exciting to tackle cleaning the stove as I went room to room each day. And the highlight of the week was a trip to get a flu injection and to go to the supermarket. I mean, how sad is that? But that would be the highlight. Many hours were spent contacting family and friends to ensure that everyone was managing. Adult children started laying down the law to their parents as to what they should or should not be doing. That was a change. We missed meeting with our families for dinner, but we could chat with them over the fence. One of the hardest things, I guess, was not being able to go to church and meet with our church family. But we became whizzes on Zoom chats and putting together online services. I finally gave myself permission to sleep in past 7 a.m, something I never did, and to sit down in the afternoon and read a book. It was pretty radical. Working from home and homeschooling provided the chance to share some special family times, and it did save on hours of travel and petrol money. Agendas were forgotten. I was enjoying a compulsory slowdown, and it felt pretty good. In fact, a gift in many ways. I think that perhaps some of you may well identify with some of what I enjoyed at that time. As we slowly came down the levels and back to level 1, there was a sense that we had made it. We had great pride in ourselves and our country and our leaders. We were feeling free and life could now return, well, almost to normal. Apart from overseas travel and the fact that those returning to New Zealand had to quarantine for 2 weeks, things, it seemed, were under control. Fast forward 102 days. Something is amiss. We hear the news at 9:15 p.m. that we'll be returning to level 3 the next day, as there's been a new outbreak of COVID in Auckland. The rest of New Zealand will be back to level 2. Suddenly, our world, it seems, is turned upside down, and we're all really in a state of shock. Some even flee Auckland before the lockdown begins at midday the next day. Children are back home for school, and although many businesses staying open, there will be many regulations involving masks and COVID traces. In fact, our daughter-in-law Fran, produced probably close to 300 masks in the time since masks were made mandatory. We'll be back to meeting only in groups of 10. Large gatherings, including church, are off limits once again. And how do we cope this time? I am feeling things that I don't really even like to share. Any form of spring cleaning is definitely no longer on the agenda. I have the urge to sleep and stay in my pajamas till mid-morning. I've no desire to go to the shops. I feel totally unmotivated, and the only thing that really brings me to life is going for very long walks and appreciating the beautiful place that I'm privileged to live in. I wonder, am I different to others with my lack of enthusiasm? So I talk to people, and I'm surprised to find a common theme coming through. Most are finding this lockdown harder than the first. There's a general feeling of lack of motivation, and this is tied in with the inability to set any goals. Most of us are making plans all the time, and in normal times, nowadays you can't even plan for the next day. So I do some reading and I find an article that I can really relate to. It suggests that the second time around is proving to be more difficult for many than the first. It's common to be sick of Zoom meetings, to find it hard to focus on anything, or to stay motivated. Homeschooling has worn very thin, both for parents and teachers, and the children, I suspect. We miss the social contact with friends and family, and we miss our church family. The article suggests that the reason we can feel awful is that our surge capacity, they call it, our surge capacity has been depleted. I rather like that term, surge capacity. Our surge capacity, they say, is a collection of systems, both mental and physical, that we can draw on for a short period of time. Perhaps in a family crisis, even maybe a natural disaster, where we call on this capacity for a shorter period of time. A pandemic is different, as this disaster stretches on indefinitely. Our surge capacity has to be rejuvenated when it's depleted, but this is hard to do in such uncertain times as a pandemic. We think we should be used to it by now, but this is a once-in-a-lifetime event, so that's a lot to expect of ourselves. Many people are feeling the same, the article suggests. This is a universal and a deeply human experience. In many ways, our new normal could be called indefinite uncertainty. And so it's really quite normal to get exhausted and feel like you're depleted. Is anyone else wondering why you can get so exhausted doing next to nothing? I think that the more accustomed we are to solving problems, having routines, making plans, getting things done, the harder it is, because so much of this is impossible right now. The lack of control is challenging. So what can we do to help ourselves? I guess I've just got a few thoughts here that I've personally found helpful. Accept that life is different. Don't try to fight it, and adjust when necessary. Expect less of yourself. Be kind to yourself as well as to others. If you're having a day where you just have to sit down and do next to nothing, well, that's okay. Just get up and do something the next day. Recognize that for many of us, we are going through the stages of grief. The common stages experienced with the death or with the loss of something dear to us. Things like disbelief and anger and bargaining, through finally to acceptance. This really is a process that has to be worked through, and it takes time. I think it's important to continue with activities, old and new, that fulfill you. Have some sort of project that you actually can be successful at, whether it be growing herbs or putting in a new garden or knitting, whatever it might be, something that you enjoy. And of course, it's wonderful that we can get outside, we can exercise, we can enjoy our beautiful country. Another one I personally found very important was focusing on maintaining friendships and strengthening important relationships. I went through so many minutes on my phone. I thought I'd never ever run out of minutes on my phone, but just ringing people and talking to them and making contact was really, really important, especially through perhaps the first lockdown. Help others. I think we all feel better when we do something to help somebody else. It just seems to be the law of how things work. You help somebody, you always feel better yourself. And perhaps most important, count your blessings. We're so fortunate compared to so many other countries. We live in paradise, really. And do continue to plan even when it seems fruitless. You've got to just still have that desire to plan and the hope that that things will come to pass. And keep the faith. Keep the faith. This will pass. The very good news for us at Maraetai Church is that the completion of the building has continued during this lockdown, and it should be finished on schedule. We're so fortunate that the builders are in their own bubble, and because the building is completed on the outside, they can work inside all the time, so that hasn't been slowed down at all. I realise, though, that what I've shared may be a long way from your own experience for some of you. Perhaps you kept working right throughout this time, and in some ways life is not too different to before. Or you might even be a person that loves to stay at home and not be bothered by the isolation. I know that Mark feels much like this. He's quite happy just to be here, garden, working on his daily messages. He feels that this life is working really quite well for him, although he does long too to be back with all of you at church on Sundays. But for each of us, it's a personal journey, and I fully acknowledge that the difficulties that many have experienced through that time have been almost overwhelming. And so we have to look at that along with the blessings of this time as well. I read that this time can be likened to trying to stand in a dinghy in rough seas and not knowing when the storm will pass. It seems to me that's a pretty good way to describe it. So as Christians, it's so reassuring to know that God is in control, that he will have the last word, and it will be a good word. I pray that you'll always know this reassurance and peace in your lives, today and always. And just to finish, I'm reminded of the words of an old hymn that probably some of you might remember. The words of the chorus were, "On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand." And it seems to me that these are very good words for us to hold on to at this time. Amen.
Before the throne of God above, I have a strong and perfect plea, a great high priest whose name is love, who ever lives and pleads for me. My name is graven on his hands, my name is written on his heart. I know that while in heaven he stands, no tongue can bid me thence depart. No tongue can bid me thence depart. When Satan tempts me to despair and tells me of the guilt within, upward I look and see him there, who made an end to all my sin. Because the sinless Savior died, my sinful soul is counted free. For God the just is satisfied to look on him and pardon me, to look on him and pardon me. Behold him there, the risen Lamb, my perfect spotless righteousness, the great unchanging